Good morning. We are going to go over some things because you're a day behind the girls. So I don't want to waste today, even though I'm not there. So I'm going to go over I'm going to review what we've gone over, and then we're going to do some new things. So you need your sketchbook, you need colored pencils, you need maybe a pencil also. Okay, so remember last time we were working together, we talked about the color wheel and we talked about the primary colors, which are yellow, blue, and red. We talked about the secondary colors, which are orange, purple, and green. My thing is lagging a little bit. Uh, and then we talked about the tertiary colors, which are the fill-ins between each of those. So this red, orange, for example, or this purple, or violet red, etc. So we have primary, secondary, tertiary colors. Remember that your color wheel needs to be split up pretty evenly. A lot of you had problems doing like half of it red and then the rest of everything split into 9 pieces or 11 pieces, whatever, on the other half. That's not how a color wheel works. The reason that it has to be correct like this, split evenly, is because we have this idea of complementary colors. Remember, complementary colors are those colors opposite each other on the color wheel. So for example, orange and blue, right? So when we want to desaturate a color, remember we have saturated colors, which is just the pure red or pure orange or a pure primary or secondary color. If we want to desaturate it or make it a little bit muddy, we start with the color we want. So we're going to desaturate red. We start with a little base of red, and then we do very lightly, we do some green, because that's opposite red on the color wheel. It's red's complementary color. So this is how we make desaturated colors. And we're going to use this in our second part of this thing we're doing with watercolors. It's going to be a lot easier to do it with watercolors. But we're also going to need it for our second project that's worth a lot of points, the big project. Like with our visual voice project, we're going to do another project, but you're going to have to include saturated and desaturated colors. So it's important that you understand these concepts. All right, so we're going to go over a couple other concepts regarding color, and then we're going to go over some other things. So first we have, and it might be useful and helpful for you to take notes directly in your sketchbook, because again, what we're doing right now is basically taking notes, right? So that when you're working on your first part of the project, the second part of the project, and then your final project, you can look back at these and say, what was a complementary color again? Oh yes, look, I've made a beautiful note in my sketchbook, so I could just refer to that. So be sure you're taking notes too, just whatever I'm writing down, you should probably write down in your sketchbook, okay? So we have this idea of warm color and cold color. Warm colors and cold colors. So our cold colors, or our cool colors, are pretty much everything on this half. It's the things that you think about when you think about cold. You think about blue, you think about purple, maybe some darker green. So it's all of these darker colors. And then our warm colors are the ones you think about when you think about fire. So pretty much red to yellow. Those are all of our warm colors. So you can write that if you need to remember red, orange, yellow, and blues, purples, dark green. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make what's called a gradient. We're going to make 2 gradients. A gradient is where we start with one color on one end. You've maybe heard me say this in science before. We have a gradient. Ignore this for right now. This right here, you can just ignore what's happening on the right side of the page. So our gradient is an area of low concentration or a high concentration going to low concentration, and then going to a lot of concentration again. So we're going to do a warm color gradient first. So we're going to start with dark red on one side, and we're going to push really hard, and then we're going to push less and less and less and less as we go across. Okay, so here we have something like that, going from very dark, super dark red to very light red. All right, so we're gonna do this with our warm colors. We're gonna do it all in one gradient. So the left side is our red side. Then we have our yellow side on the right side. So we're gonna, our next warm color, well, we have red, orange, and yellow, but orange is in the middle, right? If you look at your color wheel, we have red, and then we have orange, and then we have yellow. So we're gonna put red on the far left, then we're gonna skip over and do the far right, we're going to yellow, but in the middle of them, we're gonna have orange, but we're gonna do yellow first. So here we're gonna start the same thing. We're gonna start really dark yellow, about right here, really dark yellow, and then we're gonna go lighter and lighter as we go over towards the red, and then pushing very, very lightly as we get into the red, very lightly, all right? All right. And then we have this yucky part in the middle that we need to take care of. And our next warm color is orange. Remember, it's in between red and yellow. So we're gonna do light on this side and then dark in the middle. And then it's gonna go light again as it fades into orange, very lightly into orange. So we're gonna do dark orange in the middle, fading into the yellow, doing very lightly, very lightly. You don't even wanna put orange all the way over. You don't put orange all the way over, just very lightly if you can see. Here, let me see if that is a little easier to see. See, I don't even use my orange colored pencil all the way over in that yellow side. And then we're gonna do the same thing going over here. So we're gonna use light and going lighter and lighter and lighter until we are barely pushing into the red, all right? Okay, so that is our warm color gradient. Maybe you need to pause the video and take, I don't know, 60 seconds to finish that. So this is our warm color gradient. You can go ahead and pause. All right. Now we're gonna do a cold gradient, cold color gradient, cold gradient. Whoops. Right under that, we'll do our cold gradient. So now this one's a little different because we are not going to put something in the middle. We're just gonna go from purple to blue to greenish, all right? We're not gonna do purple and then green. You can if you want, but I'm gonna just do purple, blue, green, like this. So we're gonna do, since we know how to do it now, we're gonna start with purple on one end. Same thing, pushing really hard and then softer as you pull that color across. So you should be doing this kind of with me while I'm doing it. Hopefully you're not just sitting there like a zombie watching, thinking about whatever you're thinking about. And then we're gonna do, actually, you know what? We are gonna do green. We'll do purple and then we'll do green on this side. Same thing, we'll just do it the exact same way as we did before with yellow and orange and red. So we'll do green really hard on one side, softly moving it over. There we go. All right, and then we have our dark blue. So you might, no, never mind. All right, then our dark blue goes in the middle. It looks like I'm using purple and purple, but this is blue. And then we're gonna softly move the blue over towards the purple and softly move the blue over towards the green. There we go. All right. If you want, you can add some lighter blue if you want. You don't have to, but my blue isn't it's kind of a purpley blue, so I'm gonna do that. All right, so there we have our two gradients, okay? So you need to understand what a warm color is and what a cold color is, and you need to understand what a gradient is. So hopefully we have, you've taken great notes and you remember those things. Okay. So when I was saying I have another thing we need to talk about, it's called tone. Tone, T-O-N-E. I'm gonna put it up here. So I'm gonna look at your sketchbook after today or tomorrow morning when I get back to school, and I'm gonna make sure you have a warm gradient and a cold gradient. and then I'm gonna make sure you have your notes taken about what those things are. I mean, you don't have to write sentences, just what I've written so that it makes sense to you. And then you need to have tone. We're gonna talk about tone now. So be sure you're putting these things in your sketchbook, please. All right, so tone is just the shade, the darkness or the lightness of a color. So what we're gonna do is make a little value scale here. So we're gonna start, you can use whatever color you want. We're gonna make little squares. So this is just gonna be my darkest tone. That's where I push the darkest, all right? I push the hardest, excuse me. Then my next one is gonna be slightly lighter. I'm not gonna push quite as hard. Then my next one is a little lighter until finally I get to this one, which is super light, barely pushing. All right, it's kind of running into my words, but I'm gonna go back over to make sure that it looks good. And they can tell that they're different shades, different tones. All right, so those are my 4 tones that I've made. So I go, a tone is just shade, darkness, lightness. So this tone is super dark. Then it gets lighter as I go down my value scale, as I go down the scale. Okay, so you can, let me explain and then you can take a pause. So far in your notebook, you should have your 2 gradients and your tone scale. If you need to pause the video now and wait for 60 seconds for everyone to catch up. This should not be taking very long. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so pause if you need to. And now let's go to the last part of, well, not the last part, just the next part. Okay, so far we've talked about gradients, warm colors, cold colors, and tone. Now we're going to talk about, are we going to talk about that yet? Yes, we're going to talk about these, it's called perspectives. So a perspective is how you see things, right? My perspective is, right, we see things. It's how we see things. So we have 3 perspectives in art. We can have, when we're looking at a piece of art, we can have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. You're probably all familiar with what a background is. So the background is the thing that's in the far back. So perspective gives us depth in a picture. So a background, when you're looking at a picture, you can see, oh, that's really far away. The way we can make it seem like it's really far away is by using lighter tones in our background, using very light when we're coloring our background, right? As you look way across the city or something, it seems like the colors get lighter, right? Their shades of them are much lighter. So we can make this happen by using lighter tones when we're drawing. We also use cool colors, cold colors, coolish colors in our background. They're cooler colors. All right, so that's the background. Light tones, cool colors, far away, gives the image far away, makes the image seem like it's far away. Okay, then we have, okay, that's background. Then we have middle ground, sorry. Middle ground, actually it'll be easiest to explain foreground first. So foreground is the one closest to you, the thing that's closest to you. So maybe in this picture that I'm drawing, hopefully you can see that, sorry, these are mountains in the background there. Okay, this is just a really rough sketch. All right, so we have light tones, cool colors for background. Maybe you need to write this in your notes, maybe you don't, but this will be part of your project, so hopefully you're understanding and following me. The foreground is the thing that's right in the front of the picture, the thing that's closest up, the thing that is the brightest, the thing that makes it seem like this has depth, or adding to this, making it seem like it has depth. So I have this little plant here. So this is right in the foreground. It's right by me here, right? All right, so you get the picture. This is supposed to be closest to us. So for the foreground, this is where we can use a primary color, a lot of primary colors. I forgot to say for the background, you can also use a lot of desaturated. desaturated colors. So that's in the background, desaturated, kind of muddy colors. In the foreground, you want this to pop out at you. This is the thing that you want to see. So this is where we use maybe our primary colors. We use a saturated colors, warm colors, etc., etc. Okay. Then we have our middle ground. Maybe that's something back here. Maybe there's some trees in the back. These are really nice trees. All right, so the warm colors, they're also a little bit or the middle ground, excuse me, is also a little bit desaturated. It says that we have something in the middle of our picture. So this also adds to the perspective, giving this whole picture depth, right? All right, so that's the middle ground, middle. We can use some desaturated, and maybe a little darker tones, slightly darker. But the foreground is going to be the darkest, brightest, most saturated tone, the thing that we have right in front of us, darkest. All right, so our background, let's go over this one more time. Our background is in the far back of our picture. We use the lightest tones, the lightest shades, like this one. We would use this one back there. We use cooler colors in the background, and we use desaturated colors, so muddier colors. They're not as clear. Then in the middle ground, we have some desaturated colors. Maybe the tones are a little bit darker. So as we're getting closer to the person who's looking at the picture, the colors get brighter, they get less desaturated and more saturated, etc. And then in our foreground, this is where we should use a primary color. This is where we should use the most saturated colors. It should be the warmest colors like these, and it should be the darkest tones. Okay, so we've talked about warm and cold colors, we've talked about tone, we've talked about foreground, middle ground, and background. So you should have notes on all of those things in your notebook. What I want you to do today is I want you to think of your favorite place, the best place that you've been, your favorite place where you feel the happiest, where you feel most alive, whatever it is. And I want you to split it up into a background, a middle ground, and a foreground, just like I've done here. So you're going to work on about half a page in your notebook. The next page, don't do it on the same page unless you have a half a page left, which that means you're doing things super tiny, so whatever. Anyway, I want you to work on a sketch of your favorite place that includes background, middle ground, and foreground. This should, I don't know how long we've been going now, maybe 10, 15 minutes. So this should take you the rest of the period to work on this sketch. We're going to continue and we're going to add one more thing. We're going to go over one more thing on Thursday. So this sketch should be pretty much done on Thursday. All right. So if you're not going to be able to finish it in class, you need to take it home. Don't forget, you need a foreground, middle ground, and background. Right. We're going to incorporate warm, cool, and tone when we start coloring this picture, but we're not going to start coloring it today. Do not start coloring it, only sketch it. It should be a pretty good sketch, a good starting drawing, okay? Don't just try to add as much detail as possible. So if your favorite place it has cacti on the ground, then draw the cacti. Also, draw a palm tree that's in the picture or in the setting. If it's in your room, draw the stuff that's on the walls, draw the blanket that's on the bed, give it a pattern. All right, so add detail to this. Don't just be like, oh, here's a tree that's a circle with 2 lines. Like, come on. I can tell if you're not putting in the effort. So please work on that for the rest of the period. I'm going to look at your sketchbook and make sure that you have warm gradient, cold gradient, tone, notes on foreground, middle ground, background, and your sketch on half a page of your favorite place with lots of detail and lots of effort put into it. All right, please let me know on Google Classroom if you have any comments or questions or concerns. And that's it. See you later. Maybe. All right, bye.